Welcome back to the program. Today with me is Tysa Hill Guy, of course, a regulated Canadian immigration consultant and the CEO of Tabula Rasa Immigration Services, and also the co-founder of Black Africanness, which is a non-profit advocating for Black immigrants in Canada. She comes from the beautiful nature island of Dominica, and she holds a bachelor's in geology, a master's in geographic information systems, also a diploma in immigration consulting, and she is currently pursuing a PhD in geography, studying the wealth of immigrants in Canada. If you're from the Caribbean, I'm sure you have families going to Canada, you have friends in Canada, and you yourself may want to go to Canada. What you need to know, we're in a situation where it's fluid, it's changing very fast, rapid, rapid, rapid. Yeah, just give me a brief thing on how you got into this immigration business.
Yeah, good question, Ernesto. It's a mix of things. My love will always remain for geology. From since I was in high school, it's always been physical geography.
Right.
But in 2013, I was diagnosed with lupus. And so I couldn't sustain outdoor activities again. And when I moved to Canada, I was looking for something else to do. So I ventured into financial advising, which I still do. So I'm a licensed life insurance as well as an investment agent. And then since I came to Canada, and that's how it starts, people start asking you, how did you do it? What did you do? And so on. And I would give an explanation of my process. And one day, a good friend of mine said, have you ever thought of doing this as a career?
Wow.
And I'm like, what career would it be? So I started researching, and it was right about COVID. And I saw there's actually a career called a licensed immigration consultant.
Wow.
And it was a boot camp. And I'm like, I can handle a boot camp for 6 months, 8 hour days.
Wow.
And then you graduate. So I did that and then just ventured out on being my own boss.
We're hearing all the changes coming out from the north, whether it be the US or Canada. The question would be for all of us with the recent immigration changes, what does it mean for us in the Caribbean?
Well, first of all, it means a lot more work for me, number one. But it's a lot more work for us and I'll say us because I'm still Caribbean, right? It's a lot more work for us in the Caribbean as well. So before it used to be almost wash your foot and come, as we say in Dominica, but it cannot be like that anymore. One route that we would have come through a lot would have been the study permit, for example. Now, and that used to be overburdened with students just coming for a diploma or certificate, right? And the reason for that was that or these programs were cheaper, right? You could do a 2-year diploma for 20,000, 10,000 a year, that kind of thing. But it also had the opportunity to go from a student to a permanent resident. And that's how many people were selling it, come to Canada as a student and gain permanent residency. It was never a guaranteed pathway. It was always an opportunity that was there should you be eligible. So you find it was just flooding diplomas and certificates. So now with the changes the government did, where they capped the amount of international students and they capped it to mainly major universities, all those fly-by-night colleges that were taking advantage of these diplomas and certificates, they were forced to close down or to scale back, right? So we now, from the Caribbean, we have to look at other opportunities. It can't be a diploma, it can't be a certificate. They're pushing you to not even bachelor's, mostly so master's and PhD. That's what Canada is really pushing people towards, because that's what we need at the end of the day. So if you're thinking, and I just focus on the study permit because it would be the biggest immigration program, if you're thinking of coming to Canada to study, now we should be having discussions about what program are you coming to study? What level are you coming to study? Are you coming for long-term goals, or are you coming to just gain the experience and go back home? What province would be the best province? Within that province, what city is the best city? Because if it's long term, you have to start thinking about what now are my options to stay long term, right?
Correct.
And not all provinces are created equally, not all cities are created equally. And as such, it like you really have to sit down and plan. It cannot just be, oh, there's a cheap program, I come in to do that. That will not work in Canada for anybody anymore.
And in terms of the visitor visa, which a lot of people, try to get
Yes.
organized, and when they go up there, they claim refugee status or they want asylum. I mean, what advice are you giving them now? Because the environment is really changing.
Absolutely. And I laughed a lot. So my staff in Dominica actually shared your YouTube yesterday with me.
Oh,
And I
yes,
laughed because I love your honesty, right?
yes, yes.
Because our people, I'm sorry to say it, but it's the bitter truth. We love to be lied to.
That's true.
If you tell them the truth, it will be, oh, you come Canada, you're doing well, and you don't want me to come. Yeah, but I came to Canada the right way, and I struggle my struggle to do what I needed to do. Don't look for the easy routes. And again, one thing you said was the refusal rates of visas.
Yeah,
And I mean, it may not be so much so from the Caribbean because our population is nowhere compared to, let's say, when you put India and China and Africa in the mix, right? Especially India. So, a few things that happened, I think last year, especially, there was a whole plane of citizens, either from Kenya or Ghana, I think it was, with the false promise that when they came to Canada, they could just get a work permit
wow.
come to Canada now, and their only thing was to claim asylum. So imagine, I can't remember the numbers, but let's say hundreds of people interact. And you could look it up online to see the news clip, intent, and they fighting for some sort of promise from the government, right? But again, it was that false hope, come on a visa and claim asylum. These people may get away with it because there may be grounds in Africa for asylum. We don't have no grounds in the Caribbean for asylum, right? Or seeking refugee,
Correct.
unless it's a situation where you're being like really abused, you fear for your life because of whatever. But you need to have all the proof and evidence to sustain that claim, right? Because they're going to research it.
Correct.
So you find that um, our visas are not refused as much because our people don't necessarily do that, right? However, in the last year, since the changes have occurred, people who are here and do not have like an option to stay for permanent residency and so on, they're starting to claim asylum. And one of the biggest claims is they're claiming that they're part of the LGBTQ population and that they fear going back to the Caribbean islands because most of our countries don't necessarily openly accept LGBTQ population, right? So we will start seeing a lot of these refusals. We might also start seeing countries where they have the ETA, so that's the electronic travel agreement,
Correct.
where you don't need to go through visa process. It's just pay $7 and you're authorized to enter. You will see countries who have those starting to get visas where they will have to be vetted the entire visa process. So expect to see that because some of our asylum claims and humanitarian and compassion is another one. They've gone up ridiculously within the last year.
And I know for St. Vincent's case, they used to have a lot of claims about LGBT. There was political issues. They used to claim that, and then there was a visa on us, and then we had problems, and then the government worked it out with different countries in the Caribbean. We're now using ETA as well, but that's if you have a US visa here, you could get the ETA, but outside of that, you still have to apply for the Canadian visa. But
Correct.
it's a something that each country they're cracking down now. But what immigration pathways, stating that, what are the pathways that are available for Caribbean nationals seeking to move to Canada? What are those pathways that are available now?
So, for the most part, everything that's available to everywhere else is
Yeah,
available to us, right? So the usual, if it's temporary, you have study, you have work, you have visit, so the visa. If it's permanent, it's really the express entry. You have provincial nominations, and you have the family sponsorship.
Correct.
Now, the let's just talk about the express entry, because people really think that Canada has a million and one different programs. No, we really just have express entry, to be honest. So even if you come to Canada to study or to work, you still have to become eligible for express entry, right? Or you can apply for express entry from outside of Canada, which is how I migrated to Canada through the express entry. Now, that has become harder because it's a point system. So you have right now we're at like 550 thereabout with points. A 550 candidate would maybe be late 20s, early 30s, have a master's degree or PhD, have at least 5 years work experience, maybe have family in Canada, work experience in Canada. So it's a lot to get that 500 points, right? A typical person outside of Canada may not have that 550, 560 scores. So that's why it's looking like we don't have opportunities. But the other thing too is, as a Caribbean people, we have to understand when Canada looks at, let's say, somebody from the Caribbean versus somebody from India or Africa. These Indians and Africans have like four masters, five PhD, three bachelors. So they come well educated. And then here comes our Caribbean person with maybe a bachelor's or just a master's. We're not competitive.
Just a secondary school certificate.
Eggs. And you know what, Ernesto, that is something, it may be a little slide from our topic, but that's something that really annoys me. The amount of our people who have not even completed high school
Wow.
or did not want to complete college. And I mean, I will have the job opportunities, but they're not looking for somebody for high school. Or you may have all the experience in construction or in welding or in plumbing or in electricals, but you did not finish high school.
Right.
So again, this whatever it is that slides in the Caribbean or slides in our Caribbean islands, that's the only place it's going to slide. So if you want to consider, and you said it on the YouTube, yes, that I listened to yesterday, these countries are protecting their countries, and
Correct.
you cannot blame them for doing that. So, and I wrote a blog the other day for my business, and it says IRCC owes you nothing, and we come with this mentality that I am entitled to come to Canada. Says who?
Yeah.
Right? Says who? And you're coming with qualifications that are not competitive on the global market, right? So we need to, and that's why I'm kind of happy with the changes with the study permit,
Yep.
because it will now force our people come to do a master's, come to do a PhD, get funding for your PhD, get funding for your master's, and elevate yourself as opposed to this diploma and certificate
Yep.
that is not competitive. Because again, when the Indians and the Africans come, yes, they come to do their 2 year certificate or diploma, but they have three masters already. They
Already.
have a PhD already, right? And here you come in with a high school coming to do a certificate. You're not competitive.
Not competitive.
You're not competitive.
And that is why maybe many of them seek this asylum when they come, because
Exactly.
yeah. But you've already, to me, what you did there was to encapsulate some of the things that people need to overcome the changes and
Absolutely.
succeed. So because I was going to ask you that, but you basically encapsulate that already. So I want to move on to the issue of the common fraud schemes that are reaching the region, because every now and then you go on the internet, you see a thing pop up. I can help you get to Canada. I can help you become a citizen. I can help you get to the US. I can get you a green card. And people simply fall for these scams, lose a lot of money in the process. So talk to me
Yes.
about that. That's important.
And I think it brings me back again to, they would not listen to me, even if they pay for a consultation, but they will see these frauds and they will jump on it, get scammed, and lose thousands of dollars, but be mad at me to say that, oh, you need to pay me for a consultation. But I actually took note of three common ones. The first one is really annoying because it just says answer these three questions and you're eligible for a work permit, or I think it was you're eligible for permanent residency. And I'm like, let's think about that. What three questions can somebody possibly ask you to get your work permit into Canada? And the next question to you is, if
Yeah.
it was that easy, how many people would still be in the Caribbean
No,
or
it's
anywhere else in the world, right?
correct.
So that's one I see often. There's also Canada wants thousands of people sign up today.
Yeah.
And then the government of Canada is doing an online webinar, whoops, all kind of crap. These are some of the common ones I see reaching our Caribbean and people. There was one, I think it was the same three question one. Answer the three questions, then you had to give them five names or five email addresses or something before it takes you to the work permit page. And this was just going like hot bread on a Sunday morning after church. And when you even look at the websites are so crappy. If it was the government of Canada, why would they have www.comebuylater.com? Like it's a government website. So little things like that are hints that these things are fake. And again, outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau would always say, if it seems too good to be true, then guess what?
So in terms of the you'd advise people if they're looking for genuine websites to get information in terms of how to get to Canada, how to obtain work permits for Canada, what are requirements and stuff like that. Where would you advise them to go, basically, then?
Always the government of Canada website. So even like licensed consultants, lawyers, we have our own websites, but most times these are not updated as fast as, and trust me, if I had to be updating every hour, I would have a designated staff just to sit down and update, right?
Right.
So the changes happen quicker than we can update our websites. So even if you see an article and you read it, you go to www. I think is canada.ca is the government's website, and you find your information there. Not canada.com, not come to canada.ca, not workingcanada.com, Government of Canada website is
Okay.
up to date, and it's the most um, credible source of information.
What are some of the you would say common mistakes people make in trying to get a work permit, permanent residence and stuff like that in Canada, and why they really should not do those things?
So common mistakes. I took some. Okay. So common mistakes that I find with our region is number one, um, they would not put enough supporting documents for their claims. So, for example, I work at such and such a place. Where's the job letter proving that you work there, right? Because we have to keep in mind that IRCC knows. I think most importantly, just remember IRCC is made up of everybody. So
Right.
the person looking at your application might well be from St. Vincent. So keep that in mind. So based on the lies that you tell or the asylum claim that you make, the person looking at your case might jolly well be from St. Vincent, might jolly well be from Dominica. So don't think it's some white Canadian that never traveled that's looking at your case, right? So so that's one thing to remember. Always put enough supporting documents. The website has a generic checklist. These are the things you don't want to forget. But everybody's case is unique, and your supporting documents should reflect that. Some of them put way too much information that hurts their case rather than helps them. I remember having an applicant, and she had all sorts of pictures with she and her partner. She had all the debts that she and her partner has, and I'm like, why? There over another big one is your overall proof of funds. So you get that refusal where your financials or your proof of funds are insufficient for your travel or something like that. I usually say if you're coming for 2 weeks, have at least 8 to 10,000 Canadian to show. Because when you start to think about your ticket is maybe $2,000 round trip,
Correct.
If you're saying you're going by someone, then that person needs to show a letter, even if they show funds that they can sustain your 2 weeks. Um, Another common one is um, there's a question on the form, especially for the visa. Have you, I think for all of them, have you ever been refused a visa or entry to another country?
Correct.
And a lot of people put no because they think it's asking about Canada. They're asking you about any country
Any
in
country.
the world.
Right.
So that's a common, I think that's maybe the most common one after proof of funds.
Was going to ask you about the mistakes people would make in terms of their applications and what they should avoid actually. But you jump started it, so go right ahead. Go right ahead.
So
Yeah.
who did your application is important. Now, and that has always been the law in Canada, but
Right.
now it's being enforced.
Wow.
There is a rise of unlicensed representatives for Canadian immigration processes. Now, the law in Canada is anybody can do your application for you if you're not paying them. So
Okay.
they're not compensated, anybody can, and there is a designated individual form that person needs to fill out and submit with your application. If you are going to pay somebody to do your application, that person has can be one of three people: a licensed immigration consultant like myself. You can cross-check those on the College of Immigration. CICC is our governing body. Type in the person name. They will tell you if the person is licensed. Are they active? Have they had any like suspension or any charges against their license? You can see all of that. It's public information.
Wow.
Number two, an immigration lawyer. If you're working with the person and they said they're in Ontario or they said they're in British Columbia and they're a lawyer, you go to the Law Society of that province, Law Society of Ontario, and so on. And you type in that person's name. Again, information is public. And the third one is in Quebec. If you're dealing with Quebec, they're called notaries. Same thing, go on the website and confirm. Anybody else that you pay to do your application is considered illegal, and we call them ghost consultants. So that would include travel agencies, that will include visa application centers. We have a lot of those in the Caribbean. Any one of those that you are paying is illegal. The right way is you do it yourself or you don't pay. Or if you use one of us, we don't use the everybody portal. We have our own portal. So there is a use of representative form that you will sign saying you give us the authority to act on your behalf. And then we through our portal we submit everything. So any communication from government comes to us and then we deal with it. It doesn't come to you. Whereas if the person is not licensed, they create a portal as you and they update everything through that portal. And these are not licensed, they are illegal in Canada.
Oh, excellent. So that would actually cover what I was about to ask about. Anyone could help you in terms of completing your application and submitting it to the Canadian immigration. So with that in mind, I
Mhm.
want to ask you because I've heard a lot of things, and I wanted to know what were some of the actions actually that the IRCC can actually take to curb the fraud or the misrepresentation that's taking place.
So I actually pulled up one of the refusal letters, right? So I want to read that to you. I'll try to take pieces from it.
No problem.
So, dear so and so, and this is an official letter from IRCC.
Okay.
Um, and it says, Dear so and so, this is in reference to your application for temporary residence. Please be advised that your temporary resident visa is not valid to Canada at this time. So basically, that visa was already approved. And IRCC is coming back and canceling it, right? And I'll talk about that in a while. This document could not be used for further travel to Canada as we are reviewing your application in light of new information. And I'll just scroll down. Um, Specifically based on your submission and the information you provided, I have concerns that you omitted to declare that you used a compensated representative to facilitate the submission of your application.
Wow.
Then it goes down to say your your application contains evidence that it was facilitated by the same person or entity as many other applications received in this office.
Wow. So they actually they know. They know.
They know. So, two things IRCC is doing now.
Mhm,
Number one, if the visa is issued
mhm.
and they, so just backtrack, IRCC has a department
Right.
and they look at approved cases.
Mhm.
And if I'm an officer and I see, Ernesto's application was from there. Tysa's application was from there. Tom's application was from there.
Right.
Something rings a bell. And again, remember, some of these people are from our countries, right?
Correct. Correct.
So if that is an alert, then they cancel your visa. And there they gave them a procedural fairness letter. They actually sent them. We've had situations where you go to the airport and they're like, no, sorry, your visa is canceled. Oh, you mean my visa is canceled? It's in my passport, but it's canceled in our system. And when we go to, let's say, we write to IRCC for more information, they're like, yes, it's canceled because, and they let us know. So that's one. So this person would have been a victim of that, where they had a visa, they realized that it came from someone who is not licensed,
Mhm.
and they do that because they track location, right? They know where the applications are being submitted from.
Right.
And why should it be coming from 10 applications from this address and we don't have a licensed consultant at this address, right?
Immediately, alarm bell goes off. Right.
Exactly. So that's one scenario, or they just cancel it straight up. They refuse it, sorry. So in this case it was a cancellation, or you just get a refusal that states something similarly to that. So and then it says, I have concerns that you provided a fraudulent document with your application. Please explain the information of your representative. And that's how they're trying to clamp down
Wow.
on those. Again, we call them ghost consultants.
Right.
That's pretty much any and everybody who is not licensed and getting paid to do applications.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then yesterday we would have saw that the U.S. actually sent out a press release. They're saying, "Don't risk your life because these things have consequences." And they basically were saying what you were saying, that look, even after we issue your visa in Barbados, because this came from the embassy in Barbados, we're continuously screening,
Yeah.
and we can take away that at any moment.
The same thing in Canada. Like I tell people, so let's say this one gets away with it, right? And
Correct.
you become a citizen.
Uh-huh.
If at citizenship time or any time after that, Canada goes through your immigration history and see anywhere along the route
Mhm.
you did something fraudulent, your citizenship is at stake.
Wow.
You will go through a process of immigration court and all of that, and you have to plead why you should stay. And Canada would tell you, we're not, like, we can't base our immigration on lies and misrepresentation, and you would be right back, go back home, and it could be 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, go back home.
So you could be deported there. You have
Absolutely.
a permanent ban. You can't come back at all. You never
Yeah,
get a visa again.
correct,
That's wow.
correct.
So
Or you might have a time frame, let's say 5 or 10 years, where you can do it's called an authorization to return, an ARC. So
right.
you have to apply for that, and if they believe you have grounds, they will issue you a visa again.
But there's no guarantee that you'll get it still.
No, no,
That's really interesting.
no.
That is, that is so. There's nothing called an honest mistake in these games with these
No,
people.
sir. No, sir.
Nothing.
No.
Okay. So, get it
And
away.
the other thing too is some people think like, okay, because you use me or somebody else, that
Correct.
IRCC would be like, okay, it's not your error. Tysa made the error. Ernesto. No,
Something like
it's
that.
your responsibility.
Wow.
So anybody, and again, even if it's a licensed professional,
Mhm.
it is our duty to make the client review the application before it's submitted. So that way, if there's any error, it's your information. If there's an error, you may easily catch it than me, right?
Correct.
So yeah, you give them that opportunity to review. One more thing on that though, and you mentioned it, is even if you're issued a visa, it doesn't mean you're going to be allowed to enter Canada. So there's still that final screening at the port of entry, right? So you would see situations where a student was issued a study permit and they maybe came to Canada a month or 2 months or 3 months too early. The
Right.
officer would say, "You're coming too early. You have no reason for that. Go home. You can come back a week before school." And we've had a lot of those. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the thing is, but this is really interesting. In terms of the immigration errors that a
Mhm.
lot of our brothers and sisters make when they're in whether the United States or Canada, but this is Canada per se we're talking about now. There are a
Yes.
lot of errors they make. One of the things, of course, if you get into a country like the US or Canada, they say, look, you have 6 months in your we stamp for 6 months, that's it.
Yeah.
People, if you cross that line 6 months, you're already illegal. I don't know why people try to cry and try to say people are wicked. Once you cross that, you're illegal. And one of the things I tell Caribbean people all the time when they come and ask me questions, I said, "Do you know that these Caribbean islands have even better immigration system than Canada?" I said, "Let me tell you something. If a Saint Lucian comes into Saint Vincent or Dominican and they come via boat, they check into maybe one of those bays way up in the north, not in the capital, and
Mm-hmm.
with some the people say some weed, some ganja leaf, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If anybody in that village reports to the police that I see this strange man walking up and down, and the police comes and pick him up, the next day he's in court in Kingstown. The next day he's on a
Wow.
plane back to Dominica. So I
Wow.
tell people, look, you quarrel about Canada and the US, but these islands have more stringent
I'm
immigration
telling you.
countries. So maybe you should do it right.
I'm
But
telling you.
it brings me to some of the things now. What are some of the immigration errors that Caribbean people rarely make when they're in Canada? How to avoid it and how they can avoid these things?
So before I forget one of my points, you mentioned something, but there's something called, I think we call it red ink letters.
Mm-hmm.
We chat our business too much.
Oh yes, man.
Now, you can put in an application and I can send IRCC an email saying that Ernesto is making a claim to come to Canada. He didn't include that he had been arrested in Dominica 3 months ago. And one time, IRCC on your case because I got that letter. So that is kind of equivalent to the person in the community that will chat you out, right?
Right, right.
You find that Canada, for example, has a lot of leniency because we have obligations to humanitarian asylum and refugees and so on. So they must go through that process. We
Correct.
cannot just be like Trump, put them on a plane and send them go. I guess we're a bit more diplomatic than that.
Yes.
Um, so some of the errors that I see, and you said it about the visa. So the visa is an entry document. It is not a document that allows you to stay in the country. So when somebody enters Canada, regardless if they stamp your passport or not, because a lot of them say, "Oh, they didn't stamp my passport." It doesn't matter. You came on March 26th, 6 months from now, you're supposed to leave.
Get out.
Now, there is a document called a visitor's record. So there's visitor's visa allows you to enter, and then there's a visitor record that allows you to stay. Now, you have at least, so again, March 26, April, May, June, July, August, September. So by September 24th, you should be out of the country.
Right.
However, you're allowed to apply to extend your stay or apply for a visitor's record, right? But you need to do that before September 24th.
Okay.
And once that application is in, you obtain what is called maintained status. So you can stay in Canada legally for as long as you want until a decision is made. And
Okay.
that decision might be it's refused, leave immediately, or it might be you're given an additional 6 months or something like that. Most times it takes so long to give the visitor's record that at that time you may be stayed another 6 months. But
Wow.
there's no limit as to how much you can extend that stay. So rather than going out of status, you just keep applying to extend your stay until you figure out what is going to happen. Because anything, let's say me as a consultant would want to do for your work permit, change you to a student, maybe you're going to get married, whatever it is, you need to have a valid status in the country.
You
So
need,
apply for that visitor's extension. Another common one is, I think we spoke about, just coming as a visitor and you agree, you go in and work under the table.
correct.
Um,
That's a big
Again, these have implications, right? Because then you may want to do a study permit application, or you might end up getting a work permit, and they're going to scrutinize everything. And if they see that you said, no, I never worked, and they found out it's a misrepresentation, it's a 5-year ban, you need to leave immediately, right? So don't take those chances with your life. Another one is parents would come with their children, be it on a visitor's visa or a study permit or work permit, but they'll only be concerned about their status. The children are immigrants too. They have a status that needs to be maintained. So you would find parents come, they didn't apply for anything for the kids. They maybe just entered with them on a visa. 6 months later, no renewal of the kid's status, but the parents is still going on their study permit. So always remember to renew your children's status as well. They're immigrants, they have a status, they have a deadline, they have all of that as well. Um, I think that's some of the main
Yep.
ones.
I want to believe so.
Yeah,
But you had mentioned the issue of going to extend your stay. But do you have to give them a specific reason why you want to extend that stay?
absolutely. You must have the reason, you must have the proof of funds. So it's almost like applying for a visa all over again.
Yeah.
Obviously, different documentations, because you're not going to show a job letter at that
Okay.
point,
You
but
can.
you can show the job letter if, let's say, it might be an updated job letter that states you took an additional 6 months leave of absence or something like that, right? But it has to be pertinent to the
That's a,
case.
right. Right.
But yeah, you need to have reasons. And if they find that reasons is a crap of,
Yeah.
yeah, it
You know,
will be refused.
some cow dung. But
Yeah,
let me ask you something. Who are some of the people you think that they would give preference to in terms of when they're extending? Is there a group that you think they would give preference to? I mean,
I wouldn't say a group, but maybe scenarios.
scenario.
So
Okay.
let's say a child with a parent for whatever issue, or maybe a child where, and I mean adult child who's maybe
Correct.
taking care of an elderly parent. Um, Maybe you wanted to go to school, but the school is not starting yet and you're still on a visitor's visa, these kind of scenarios. Maybe medical attention, you came and you have to do a surgery, but the date is further than you anticipated. These are some of the scenarios that I think would be legit and they would consider. You can ask, if I'm doing one, I ask for 1 year extension based on the person's scenario. And sometimes they give you the 1 year. Like I said, by the time they respond and make a decision, sometimes 6 months pass already. So yeah, you might just be at the point where you need to just put in another one time, because again, as long as the date hasn't passed and you put in that application, you have maintained status, so you're legal.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent, excellent. So, guys, you're watching, and I'm gonna leave a link in the description for your website. So, anyone who needs to access can contact with you. That link would be there. And I really want to thank you for coming to explain so many things today. I learned so much. One by one, you get 6 months, get out when your 6 months is over. You have a valid reason to stay, go and ask for that extension way before that time. Number two, don't use these crazy websites that pop up and say, I'll help you get to Canada, I'll give you a green card in 2 weeks or whatever it is. These are scams, so many things. But this is a good learning experience as well for me. And I hope when you guys are watching this, you will get the necessary information you need. So thanks so much for coming on today. And
You
being
are welcome. And we help people anywhere in the world, so they don't need to be in Canada. Yeah.
thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you being with us today. And we're looking
Thank you,
forward to
Ernesto.
in some time in the future because I know things are going to change again very soon.